Okay, so welcome everybody tonight. We are very excited to have Dr. Wayne Westcott talking to us about, do protein shakes make a difference in weight loss? And he's talking about a very surprising, talking about the surprising health benefits of resistance exercise and protein shakes that Dr. Westcott discovered in a very impressive new study around the topic. So tonight's presentation is brought to you by Your Wellness Project, and Your Wellness Project was created to educate people on topics from nutrition and supplements to going green, to make better educated, or the better educated that you are, the better decisions you can make for your health. And we have that with events like this, our wellness resource, and weekly newsletters and updates. So the obesity rate in the United States has risen to almost 40% of the population. This statistics becomes even more alarming when you consider that obesity is tied to two of the leading causes of death in the world, which are heart disease and diabetes. And there we go. And but if you're overweight, your goal should not only be to shed some pounds, but to lose the right type of weight. So in this webinar, we're going to discuss how you can lose the right type of weight without losing muscle mass by combining the power of protein shakes with resistance exercise. So what we're going to cover tonight is how obesity affects your health, the stimulus and substance necessary for healthy weight loss, what studies show about the effects of protein shakes, and a few little extra tidbits that I know are in here as well that we're very excited to share. So tonight, I am extremely thrilled to introduce Dr. Wayne Westcott. So Dr. Westcott is Director of Exercise Science at Quincy College in Quincy, Massachusetts. He has been a strength training consultant for numerous organizations, including the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Air Force, the American Council on Exercise, the YMCA of USA, General Motors, and Nautilus. He has authored 30 books and textbooks combined and published more than 90 peer-reviewed research and academic papers. Dr. Westcott has also served was served as an editorial advisor, reviewer, writer, and columnist for numerous research, professional, and trade journals. He has received many professional honors, including awards from the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports, the Governor's Committee on Physical Fitness and Sports, and of course, from the Pennsylvania State University. So, Dr. Westcott, thank you so much for lending your time and sharing this study with us. If anyone has ever heard him talk, he is extremely enthusiastic about this research, and I'm very excited to pass this on to you. So, Dr. Westcott, it's all yours.
Kristen, thank you so very much. I'm honored to be here. Those of you that don't recognize me in person, that's because Kristen used my high school graduation picture in the promo. Pretty old, but I'm enthusiastic. I love doing this. And I'd love to talk to you about how we can really reverse the obesity epidemic if the medical profession and nutritionists and exercise science people would all get together in this effort. The most important fact I'm going to share with you that most people do not realize, because they are actually gaining weight decade by decade, they don't realize they're losing anything. And in fact, they're losing muscle at the rate of about 5 pounds per decade if you are a female, about 7 pounds per decade if you're a male. And then all of a sudden, when you hit about age 50 or the menopause years, that rate, not so gradually, actually doubles. So women after menopause are losing about 10 pounds of muscle on a decade by decade basis. Of course, that accelerates, during the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. But these names you see underneath my slides are simply the researchers who've published in the best journals, like the Journal of the American Medical Association and Journal of the American College of Sports Medicine, those types of journals with this data. We do some of this ourselves, but we also count on a lot of experts in the field to support what I'm saying, and this is fully supported. People do lose a lot of muscle mass unless they are doing resistance exercise, we've known that for years, but also if they're not attaining sufficient protein on a daily basis. Whatever happens to muscle is mirrored in your resting metabolic rate or your resting energy expenditure. I'm going to use those as meaning pretty much the same thing interchangeably. But our resting metabolic rate decreases approximately 2 to 4% per year. And again, that's less in the middle adult age years, and it increases dramatically as we become more of the older adult age range, as I am. So keep in mind that muscle loss leads to metabolic rate reduction, and metabolic rate reduction almost always results in fat gain. I want to throw this in because we've done some studies on this topic as well, which will be included tonight, and that is bone mineral density. You all know about osteopenia, which leads to osteoporosis. And the rate of muscle loss, which by the way is often referred to as sarcopenia, and the rate of bone loss, which I mentioned, osteopenia, are also parallel lines. They go hand in hand. So the 5 to 10 pound muscle loss per decade is actually largely responsible for and check this number, 10 to 30% per decade reduction in bone mineral density. Again, in the 30s and 40s, it's lower. In the 50s and 60s, it's higher. And then, of course, it increases above that age range. But muscle is very important. Muscles are the engines of the body, and they're also very much effective in terms of the chassis of the body. So if I compare this to a car, muscles are really important. You need an engine, you need a chassis, you need strong bones, and you need a good resting metabolic rate to stay not only in good health, but also to have a high level of fitness and functionality. There are some reasons for this, extremely large rate of decline or deterioration or degeneration in aging adults. And one of those, which you can tell I don't really want to say this because I've been involved in exercise and fitness for over 50 years as a professional. All the work that we've done, when the CDC takes a look at how many adults are meeting the minimum requirements for daily exercise or weekly exercise, if you will, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, of just moderate paced walking, like a 2.5 mile per hour walk, which if you go on a treadmill, I doubt that you go that slow. And that could be accumulated through gardening or raking leaves, or if you're a mail carrier, anything that gets you to 30 minutes of moderate exercise 5 days a week would qualify you as being physically fit. And yet the studies where they don't just call you on the phone and say, well, you're pretty fit, and everybody says, oh yes, I work out a lot. But when they actually put accelerometers on people and measure this, less than 5%, and you can see in the slide about 3.5% of adults in the midlife years up to age 60, and then older adults over age 50. I mean, we're averaging about 3% there, 3.5% for the younger adults and 2.4 for older adults. This is not good. We definitely need to do more exercise. And this is just the, kind of the aerobic activity that everyone thinks about when they think of exercise, and doctors recommend, go for a walk, which is great, but it's far less for those who do any type of resistance exercise, which we'll discuss in a little more detail shortly. If we can go, yes, thank you. This particular slide is a lot more recent in terms of its information and understanding. As we age, we do not process protein as well as we did when we were younger. It drops off quite dramatically, the ability to assimilate amino acids from protein to build our muscles and our bones. And in fact, people over age 50 need a lot more protein than people in their 20s or 30s or even 40s. Campbell, who's done so much research in this area, has stated, I don't have this on the slide, but if you just want to maintain your muscle with regular resistance exercise or strength training, I'll use those two terms interchangeably as well. If you're doing strength training, but you're only getting the RDA, you're still going to lose muscle. You need at least 25% more protein than the recommended daily allowance to maintain your muscle mass. And older adults need at least 50% more protein than the recommended daily ounce to increase their muscle mass in conjunction with a sensible strength training program. So we need, I'm going to get this in our summary as well, but we need a stimulus to build muscle, and we need the substance that comprises muscle and most everything else in the body that's important, and that is protein. This is an interesting slide. This is based on an actual CAT scan done at Tufts University by Dr. Miriam Nelson, who wrote the fabulous book Strong Woman, Strong Bones a few years ago. I couldn't put the actual CAT scan here, but I drew it pretty much like it looks. So on your left on the screen, you see a cross-section of the thigh. If we just took a section right through the upper thigh of a young woman, okay, say age about 25, you'll see that the black area would represent the skin, the cream-colored area would represent the fat layer, the subcutaneous fat between the skin and the muscle. The red is the muscle, the quadriceps and hamstrings and adductors and abductors, all the good muscle in the thigh. And then the white is the bone. And of course, the black would be the interior of that bone, the hollow section where you produce a lot of important things like red blood cells, etc. And if you take a look at the right, you'll see that the circumference, if you put a tape measure on that thigh, it's about the same. It's not much larger. But what's inside has changed dramatically. The skin's about the same, maybe a couple of wrinkles and crinkles, but it's similar. The fat layer has greatly expanded, and there's a reason for that. And the reason, in my opinion, and you'll see why I say this in a couple slides, the reason for the fat gain in most Americans is the loss of muscle. See how the muscle has really atrophied. Again, sarcopenia, the loss of muscle due to the aging process without providing a stimulus to maintain that muscle, without any type of resistance exercise. And you'll also notice that as the muscle decreases in mass, the bone density decreases, and you have less bone and more hollow inside that bone. Not good. And that is what we are trying to reverse, or better yet, prevent for those who are young enough to make the changes. This is a study that we did a few years ago. We had about 50 participants in this study, and they wanted to lose weight. And we said, well, that's great, but you need protein, because losing weight is easy, but much of the weight that is lost in most diet programs, up to 50% in the really stringent ones, is muscle. It's lean weight. And you don't want to do that, because then it reduces your resting metabolism and you gain the fat back. 95% of all successful dieters regain all the weight they've lost, which means they weren't really successful in the long run. So we said, you're going to do the strength training program, very simple strength training program, 20 minutes of strength, 20 minutes of endurance. We include aerobic activity too, because we think it's important for cardiovascular fitness, but it's 40 minutes twice a week. But we said, when you finish your exercise, you have to drink a protein shake before you leave. And they said, we don't want your protein shake. It has a lot of calories and we're trying to lose weight. And we said, drink it, because you then will go home and feel satiated. You're not going to stop at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or someplace and get a lot of things that have more calories and less protein and would not be nearly as useful. And sure enough, if you look at the chart, those who did the exercise only, they lost fat weight, about 5 pounds. They gained lean weight. That would be mostly muscle, some bone, maybe some blood volume, but mostly muscle. And so they made, they actually gained about 4 pounds of lean weight. And so they made about a 9-pound change in what we call their body composition. They changed their body, even though their weight didn't change very much, only lost about 1 pound on the scale. They made about a 9-pound change in their body composition, which is much more important than your body weight. However, if you look at the group that took the protein shake, they lost almost twice as much fat. They gained more muscle, and their total body composition change, if you allow me to round it up, was almost 15 pounds. They had a 60% greater improvement in their body composition, their fitness, their physical appearance. They looked firm and fit and strong, and they were, than those who did the exercise only. So having that extra protein is pretty important. We used, at that time, I think it was called the Cinch Shake. Now it'd be the Life Shake, and it had 24 grams of protein, which is just about the right amount for a post-exercise shake in terms of the literature on this particular topic. Thank you, Kristen. The follow-up to that was not a weight loss study, but as I promised earlier, we wanted to help women, postmenopausal women, rebuild bone. At that time, the physician says you can't do it. It's not possible to rebuild. You can stop it from, progressing further or reducing bone mineral density further, but you can't reverse it. And now there are numerous studies that show that you can, but at that time, this was one of the few studies that really did show that. If you look, we have a control group. This study had, I think we had about 80 people in this study. We had a control group. The control group was a good control group or a bad control group in different respects. They lost about 2 pounds of lean weight, a little more than they should have lost in the 9-month study. They lost also 1% of their bone, which is a little less than we would have expected based on other studies of bone loss. Their systolic blood pressure went up and their diastolic really went up. Not sure why that was, but as I say, you can't control the control group. They were just people that didn't do anything except what they normally did. The exercise-only group, they gained lean weight, about 4 pounds. Their bone density did not decrease. It stayed the same. So the doctors were right. The exercise maintained their bone. They didn't lose it, which was wonderful. And their blood pressure, both systolic and diastolic, the 2 blood pressure readings there, they didn't change too much. The systolic went down a little bit, and the diastolic went up just a tad, nothing major. But the exercise and nutrition group, the group that had to drink that post-exercise shake, just like in the previous study, they added more muscle, more lean weight, over 5 pounds. They increased their bone density by 1%. They reversed that loss, which is remarkable. That's actually very, very good in terms of bone. Building muscle is pretty easy. Building bone is not so quickly facilitated, believe me. So they did very well. We were very pleased with that 1%. Most of the studies the good studies see 1% in a full year. We saw 1% in 9 months. So we're very pleased with that. And the blood pressure reduction was worth the price of the study as well, because they reduced 10 millimeters of mercury in systolic and almost 5 in diastolic. And that was not a human error. We used a blood pressure unit from Mass General Hospital's operating room, a very expensive unit, and we're pretty confident in those numbers. Some interesting figures here. 70%, almost 3 out of 4 Americans are either overweight or obese. That's based on body mass index. If you actually looked at body composition, about 85% of Americans have too little muscle and too much fat. But I want that number because it's interesting that in the Journal of the American Medical Association, probably the top journal you can publish in, they found that 70% of Americans, same number, are eating reduced calorie diets. That's why I say it's not just dieting. It's not just the calories. It's not just the nutrition plan. They need a much better nutrition plan than being on diets, especially yo-yo diets. But dieting, based on every meta-analysis of all the studies done, dieting is always concluded to be uniformly unsuccessful for maintaining desirable body weight and body composition. Attaining it, yes. Maintaining it, no. Mann's huge study said it is the rare exception who maintains their body weight post-diet. It almost never happens. The reason for that is that dieting alone leads to muscle loss. In the good studies where your diet is reasonable, about 25% of the total weight loss is actually from muscle mass. That's not good because it reduces your metabolic rate, as you see in the next point, and the lower resting metabolic rate leads to fat gain. In the bad diets, where you're really cutting calories far too low, up to 50% of the total weight loss can be muscle. And so that's why those diets are even worse in terms of maintaining any weight loss that was attained during the diet itself. So here are the 2 key studies I want to share with you. Dieting with resistance exercise, now forget about the protein right now, but just adding resistance exercise is excellent because it reduces the muscle loss, which is the best thing you can do. And you say, well, wait a minute, I understand dieting only results in fat loss and muscle loss, but my doctor said I could diet and walk or diet and do aerobic activity, and I'll lose more fat. And your doctor's correct. You will lose more fat, but you will also lose more muscle. You're burning the candle at both ends, and it doesn't work well. So you need to do diet and strength. I'll get to the aerobic in a minute, but just let's look at Beaverstein. There are many others that show the same thing. If you look down here, the diet only, they lost 11 pounds of fat. They lost 2.5 pounds of muscle. When they added aerobic activity, they lost 3 pounds more fat, 14, but they lost 50% more lean. They lost almost 3.5 pounds of muscle. When they did diet and strength training, as opposed to diet and aerobic or diet only, they lost 6 pounds more fat, 3 pounds more than the diet and aerobic. They lost 17 pounds of fat, and they lost only 1.5 pounds of muscle. So this is a step in the right direction, but we're going to take it another step. So when you do dieting with resistance exercise plus higher protein intake, you can reverse the muscle loss associated with the dieting only and the dieting plus aerobic activity. So this is our 6-month study. It was a very complex study. We had 4 studies in one here. I'm just going to share with you the study where they did the extra protein. They actually did protein shake substitutes, meal substitutes for breakfast and lunch. Had no problem with that. They loved it. And they ate, normally for dinner, as long as they kept their calorie intake to about 1,500 calories per day for women and 1,800 calories per day for men. As in all of our studies, they do about 20 minutes of resistance training, very doable, 20 minutes of endurance exercise, very manageable, 2 or 3 days a week. We typically have them train on Mondays and Wednesdays or Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have makeup days on Fridays and Saturdays. If you look down, I'm sorry. Can I just say thanks, Kristen? They only lost 10 pounds in 6 months, but they actually lost 14 pounds of fat. And they concurrently gained, this is one of the very, very few studies that have ever shown this, they concurrently gained almost 4 pounds of muscle. So their real body composition changed, the total change combined the fat loss, which is good, and the muscle rebuilding, remodeling, regain, redevelopment, which is really, really, really good because it increases your metabolism as well, was 4 pounds. So you combine those and you get almost an 18-pound change. You say, well, that's over 6 months. That's basically 3 pounds body composition change per month. Is that good? It is awesome because you're going to see in the next slide that they maintain that. In fact, they continue to improve it when they combined. And here we had dieting and aerobic. We just added strength training and the protein shakes, 2 shakes a day. This one would be the Life Shake. If you're familiar with that, that's what we used, and it had essentially the same amount of protein. Now, this is my favorite because of all the studies that have looked at dieting and maintenance of the post-diet body weight, which are certainly in the hundreds, if not thousands, there are only 4 that I'm aware of, 4 very major studies, that found a 6-month period where they go back to their normal eating. We call that post-diet. They're back to normal eating. But after 6 months, they hadn't gained significantly in terms of body weight. They always gained a little, but it wasn't statistically significant. So here we are. We finished our diet. Now we say, you can go back to normal eating. Would you please do your 20 minutes of resistance and 20 minutes of endurance exercise? And they said, sure, we love that. It's not too much, not too little. It's like the Goldilocks. It's just right. They can fit that in. It fits most people's schedules, 40 minutes twice a week. And we said, would you continue, please, just one meal replacement protein shake? And they said, yeah, we love this, and it's convenient. And they did. And so here is a study, the only study that has shown not only a maintenance of body weight, that's not a statistically significant increase, the 1.5 pounds. They maintained their body weight statistically for 6 months, even back to normal eating, no diet, no restriction in calories. But they continued to lose, and this was statistically significant, 1.5 pounds of fat, and they continued to rebuild muscle, and I'm sure bone, because they go together and keep their metabolism. They added another 3 pounds of muscle. So their body composition change was almost 5 pounds in a post-exercise period. That has never happened before, to my knowledge. So I think we're coming into a really good slide. They'll explain why this happens, and then a summary slide, and then I have some new information that Kristen said I could share with you. So if you are not doing resistance exercise, you may be walking, you may be doing aerobic activity of other types, cycling or rowing, whatever it is, and that's great. We want you to do that. But if you're not doing strength training, non-strength trained muscle tissue uses about 6 calories per pound per day at rest. So if you're in bed all day, you'd still be using for every pound of muscle about 6 calories just to keep it alive, all right, to maintain the processes essential for muscle maintenance, all right, keeping the muscle alive. I'll just put it that way. But if you do strength training on a regular basis, 2 or 3 days a week, which is what we recommend, each pound of strength trained muscle tissue uses 9 calories per day at rest. That's 50% increase in the muscle metabolism, not your total metabolism, but the muscle metabolism. I mean, that's amazing. And the difference is when you do strength training, you do some micro trauma to the tissue. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It rebuilds, but that rebuilding process takes energy. And so that's why you have a 50% greater muscle metabolism. All right, summary slide. If you do a post-exercise shake, our studies, and several others at this point, show that you will enhance or increase the muscle gain, the bone gain, and the fat loss that you would attain from exercise alone. That would be enhanced. So get better muscle gain, better bone gain, and better fat loss. If you're looking to really lose a significant amount of weight, and you say, okay, I'm into this diet, I want to do my aerobic, I want to do my strength, and I have no problem with protein shakes, then guess what? You'll result in really good fat loss, excellent muscle gain, and you can pretty much count on maintaining that over time. You're not going to, at least in our studies, you're not going to regain that weight. You have made some lifestyle changes and some body composition changes, some physiological changes that will, stand well with you for hopefully the rest of your life. Now, you have to have the muscle building stimulus. That's the strength training. Some type of resistance exercise is essential, but you also need enough protein to provide the building blocks, the amino acids, to rebuild muscle, rebuild bone, increase your resting metabolic rate. So they're both important. For years, I was touting how important strength exercise is, and that does work, as you saw, but it works much better if you increase your protein. Now, we work with Carolina Povian, the famous director of the Harvard International Council on Obesity every year. She's fabulous, and she's written some best-selling books. We use her recommendation of 0.7 grams of protein per pound of your ideal body weight, the weight that you should weigh. That's significantly higher than the RDA of 0.4 grams of protein per pound. But that's what we've used. We've never had any issues with that. We've had some wonderful results. So I was going to say one more thing, if I can, Kristen, just one last thing. We just did another study. We just finished it. I can't talk too much about it because we haven't published results yet. We just sent the paper in. Hopefully it will be accepted for publication. But we did a study where we provide that same amount of protein, the 0.7 grams per pound per day, but we did it through regular meals, regular food, no shakes, and we had pretty similar results. There were only 2 areas where we did better with the shakes. That was the body mass index and the total body weight loss, which was I guess those are pretty important. But what really made the most impressive, the most impact on me was that those who did the shakes, probably because they have a fixed nutrient value and they're very, very convenient, especially when you're trying to lose weight, they had an 80% completion rate of our 6-month study. Those who tried to do this through the regular meals did well. They had good results, but we had only a 65% completion rate. So the difference is to me very important. The shakes, and I'm a shake person. I don't know if I'm just too busy to make a regular breakfast or whatever, but every morning I have a protein shake, and it's just convenient and it works really well. And I think that a lot of people found that to be the case. Krista, I'm all set. Thank you for letting me share this with your people. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Westcott. And there was one question that popped up that I really do want to cover because I think this is one, especially when it comes to exercise. Let me just pull it back up here. So where did it go? It ran away. Wait for it. How long should you wait before working a muscle group again with strength training?
That's a wonderful question. Thanks for asking that. We've done research on that, and there are other people who have done even better research. If you're a beginner trainer, you're just starting out, for the first actually, almost for the first year, you will do fine on either 2 or 3 strength training sessions per week. We've not found any significant difference between training 2 or 3 times a week, so that's a matter of personal preference. In our studies, I say we do 2 or 3. However, if you're in advanced strength training, you've been doing this all your life, as I have, you cannot recover, especially if you're over 50, you cannot recover in 48 hours. You need at least 72 to 96 hours to make a full recovery. So if you're an older exerciser and you're doing a full body workout, probably twice a week would be recommended. If you say, well, I want to do something every day, well, you could split your routine. You could do you could do legs on Mondays and Thursdays and upper body on Tuesdays and Fridays. You could split it even further if you wanted to do that. But in terms of a given muscle group, if you're a little older and if you've been training for a while, case in point, myself, okay, you need at least 72 to 96 hours recovery to make a full, and in fact, I don't just mean a full, but even, to increase the muscle mass, increase your strength, to do a beyond full, to overcompensate and get the benefits. Great question.
Awesome. Okay. Well, with that, because we are running low, Maura, I'm just going to get you to wrap this up. But before we do, Wayne, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing this information. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you got some great value out of this. And the info in here is just phenomenal. We're very excited for the next part of that study to come out. When it does, we'll be waiting for it. So that's fantastic. So Maura, I'm going to wrap it on to you, and I'll let you close it off.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, that was amazing. And of course, I am very happy to be able to listen to it more than once, because a lot of it went by pretty fast and I'm not super sciencey. But if you'd like to create a wellness plan to lose the right type of weight, something that you learned here tonight, we want you to reach out to the person who invited you to this event. And they will be able to help you and answer your questions, help you get the answers you need. We'd like to also invite you to join their wellness center and create a free account in the wellness center. You get VIP access to their digital library of wellness-focused ebooks, videos, archived webinars, and this is one of them, and more. And so you'll also get access, of course, as I said, to the replay of this event and our complete digital library of previous webinars and live streams, and access to our Vitality for Life newsletter archives, and just a ton of stuff. It's great. So with that, I'd like to say on behalf of Kristen and Dr. Wayne, everybody at Your Wellness Project, thanks again for joining our wellness webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on the next event. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.